when we get everybody gets set.
Everybody good? Move a little bit closer to the microphone, that'd be great.
Well, we were gonna wait till everybody's straight, then we'll start.
We were ready for you, Ben, when you guys.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
We got some more people bringing
Okay.
the mic up. And thank you all for your patience.
I'm good with Beige with NBC.
Being good
to see you.
Okay.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yes.
Red?
Behind you.
Get everyone behind you. Want to get
Everybody come behind. Where's the WNCT? Come behind.
Yeah, everybody getting nice and tight behind it, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Y'all want to shift over a little bit? Y'all shift over some? Over this way.
Yeah,
Over this way.
yeah,
The
good. That's
cameras
good.
are
That's good.
facing. Come on over.
Do you have a statement, something you want to read, or you just going to take it?
Yeah. Again, on behalf of Anthony Wall, I want to thank all of you all for coming out, and especially want to thank Jimmy Buxton, the local president of the NAACP, and all its members for coming out this afternoon. We're here because of the incident that happened at the Waffle House in Warsaw. We hope that when police are called to a situation, they would de-escalate it. But what we saw in Warsaw was just the opposite. We're going to talk more about that, but I've invited my good friend and fellow North Carolina native, Benjamin Crump, national civil rights lawyer, down to assist in this because of some cases that he's been working on. And so this time I want to introduce Benjamin Crump.
Thank you, Alan, and again, Mr. President, and the local civil rights groups, not only in North Carolina, but also all over America, like Dr. Bernice King, like Tamika Mallory and the Women's March, and all the co-founders of that august body, as well as the Legal Defense Fund of the National Association of Colored People, as well as the Black Justice Coalition, which is one of the leading advocacy groups for the Black LGBTQ community. We are here with Attorney Alan Rogers, who I have looked forward to working with for many years, both being here from North Carolina. I grew up right down the road in Lumberton, and Alan and I are members of the National Bar Association. So we talked about trying to fight for justice for people in our communities. I had no idea we would be fighting on something as outrageous as what we saw in that video, to a person who had his hands up when the police first encountered him. And so we're here to investigate whether the Waffle House Corporation has a pattern and practice of discrimination based on race and sexual orientation. Now, when you think about the matters all over America dealing with the Waffle House Corporation, and as I told Attorney Rogers when he first called me, I'm working on several of them. The most prominent being the one with Shakisha Clemens, who you all saw the video that went viral, like the video with Anthony Wall, where the police officer, an unarmed African-American woman, was in the restaurant as a customer. The police officer came and assaulted her, slammed her to the ground, threatened to break her arm, choked her, not the chokehold, but put his hands to her throat, disrobed her, exposing her breast, grossly violated her civil and her human rights. And then the Waffle House Corporation put out a statement that they felt everything was appropriate. Well, as you know from Dr. Bernice King and others who have called for a boycott, that is not appropriate. That is unacceptable. If you don't respect our black women, then don't expect our black dollars. We are very clear that we will stand up for our unarmed African American women. And not only will we stand up for our women, we will also stand up for our men, like Anthony Wall. But before I talk about Mr. Wall's matter that we're here for today, also note there are several other instances, Attorney Rogers, all over America where people of the African American community have been harassed and assaulted and disrespected by the Waffle House Corporation. There were 4 teenagers in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working with attorney DeMario Solomon Simmons, where these 4 teenage boys sat down at the table to be served, and the Waffle House employee told them that you all have to prepay because we find that African Americans have a tendency of running out the restaurant not paying. And so they made these young men who they did not know from anybody else pay for their food in advance. And if that's not being prejudiced, I don't know what is, Attorney Rogers. And when you think that's very consistent with these arbitrary policies that the Waffle House seems to engage with African American customers. Because remember, Shakisha, the whole situation escalated because she told those African American women that before they could get plastic utensils that they had to pay for them. Now, I don't know how it is in North Carolina, but I have eaten at Waffle Houses before, and they've never charged me for plastic utensils. But this seems to be an arbitrary policy that they use discretionarily when it comes to African Americans. And so then we come here to this matter with this young man who did something that was very noble in escorting his little sister to her high school prom. They then went to the Waffle House, as you know, afterwards. And while they're at the Waffle House, waiting to be seated, like many other people from the high school prom, people leave the table, they sit down at the table. I thought that's what businesses wanted you to do, wanted you to sit down and hopefully patronize their establishment. He was doing exactly what the Waffle House Corporation, I believe, want customers to do. They sat down at the table, and note what the first statements were from the Waffle House employee. It wasn't anything welcoming or inviting, and it's almost so inappropriate that I have problems even repeating it. But he told Anthony Wall, his little sister, and the others in their party, why are y'all sitting at this nasty table with your nasty, profane language? Finish out the statement. That's the first statement that he makes to these young people. This young white waiter, this is how he treats these African American customers. And so it's very problematic when the mayor says it's not about race, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But from there, Mr. Wall says, whoa, you can't talk to us that way. You can't disrespect my little sister and her friends this way. And it escalates. But you will see from the video evidence as well as other objective evidence that indicates it was the Waffle House employees that were the initial aggressors. It was the Waffle House employees who were unprofessional to their customers. It was the Waffle House employees who used homophobic slurs towards Anthony Wall. And this here is unacceptable. If you don't respect our business, then don't expect our dollars. And so we're here to investigate this pattern and practice of discrimination, not just against minorities, but also against the members of the LGBTQ community. And it's very important that we draw that distinction that certain statements made towards Anthony were about his sexual orientation. And that's something very important that Waffle House needs to train their employees and their officials to deal with as well.
And absolutely. And also, when you summon the police, you don't expect to have a bully police officer to come and grab a person by the neck and choke them. Again, there is no protocol that I'm aware of in North Carolina where police officers are allowed to use deadly force, use choking as a mechanism to make an arrest. Certainly not when the person has his hands up, and Anthony Wall had his hands up. You know, and they keep saying there's another part of the story. Well, the police officer has a body cam. We like that video. Mm-hmm. You know, Waffle House has a body cam. We like that video. So we like that video surveillance from the Waffle House. And clearly, again, the use of deadly force choking him was excessive and inappropriate. We saw that. But what you didn't see, there are 5 police officers there. There are 5 cars there. Now, just because he was the one to make the arrest doesn't mean that he was the one that had to transport him. Those 5 officers decided to let him get in the car with the officer with the dog. And then he goes to the back pretending to secure the dog. But of course, when he pulls off, the dog comes out and is snapping at him. What that remind you of, okay? This is in North Carolina in 2018. So after all of that, the bully cop then puts him in a car with a dog, allows that dog to be free so as to snap at him. So not only has he been assaulted, but now he gets terrified from there to his place of arrest. Again, it's uncalled for, it's not justified, and it's wrong. And we want some justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have Mr. Wall address you, but understand he has criminal charges pending, so it's very limited what Attorney Rogers and I will allow him to say, because we still have to deal with what we believe are trumped up charges to try to justify what you saw in that video. It was a gross violation of his civil and human rights. And as Attorney Rogers articulated with great passion, it reminds you of something when a person is handcuffed in a car and a dog is there giving him further detriment after he asked the police, why are you doing this to me? Is it because I'm black? So we, against, in an attempt to really let you all know how this has affected Mr. Wall, we're going to let him make just a few brief statements. Mr. Anthony Wall.
As I stated several times, my hands was in the air. Wasn't resisting, wasn't trying to at all. My head hit the glass, which had stitches in my forehead before. I stated, as my head hit the glass, I started having pain problems in my head, so I turned around. The officer immediately grabbed me, but my hands were still in the air. They only leave when I was trying to get his arm off my throat to stop him from choking me. At that point, I remember my arm been twisted, hands been pressured in a certain way to where my hands still hurt, my arm still hurt on the left side. Been thrown into cement once again with my head, so my head was hurting more when it went into pavement, concrete. His body weight, I remember being on me. 150, he's probably, give or take, 300-something pounds, way stronger than me. At that point, when my hands were in the air, all he had to really do was take my hands, put me in handcuffs. I was not trying to fight him at all or anything like that. I asked for a supervisor several times with being on the ground. He refused to even get that out there. So when the other arresting officer came, I told him he can put me in handcuffs. I have no problem with that. But like I said, I was never read no rights, never told I was under arrest.
He never identified himself to you.
That neither. He never gave me his name or anything, badge or anything like that. I told the other officer it's fine for him to put me in handcuffs. As you can see, after I got off the ground, I was picked up nicely.
Hold just 1 second. Would that go away in a second?
And maybe coming down the road here a little bit. Yeah, we give it a minute.
While we're waiting, what charges is he facing?
Victoria is a disorderly conduct and resisting arrest.
Disorderly and resisting.
And Attorney Victoria Clarkson is also assisting Attorney Rogers and myself.
And just to clarify, you guys are filing suit against the Waffle House?
What we are doing is investigating at this point.
Okay.
However, if they don't give us the video from Waffle House and Discovery, Attorney Rogers and I are preparing to file a Freedom of Information lawsuit.
And absolutely, because he does face criminal charges, we have a right, and he has the right to have that video footage from the Waffle House, the video surveillance from the Waffle House, as well as the body cam. Anthony works. He works at Wendy's, so it would be typical for him to ask for a supervisor. Anthony works at a local, I think, Pilgrim Pride. He works at one of the industries here. And I say that because so often when you see situations like this, the first thing we hear is the person's criminal history or some derogative statements. You know, in 2018, no human being should be subjected to that regardless of their sexual orientation or regardless of their ethnicity. It's wrong, and we're not going to allow it.
I will say this, one of the things why we're so dogmatic about the video being released, what they tried to do previously in Alabama is selectively pick bits and pieces of the video to try to assassinate the character of the customer, the African-American customer. And so once we got all the video out, we saw that that was not the case, the narrative they were trying to push. The fact that they only talked to Waffle House employees, the police. They didn't talk to any of the customers inside the restaurant. And that's critical if you're really trying to search for justice, search for the truth, other than framing a false narrative to try to sweep it under the rug.
So, Mr. Wall, what does it make you feel like?
Is it clear?
I think it's complete.
Okay. He's going to finish his statement.
Okay.
As I'm walking to this car, I'm asking several, or either the officer that was there, that was threatening me, that had put my life in danger, to get his hands off me because it was an officer that walked me. As you can see, his hands were still around my neck. And he proceeded to touch me because he knew that he was trying to egg it on more, even though I was calm. After the other officer, I felt a little bit safe that he was there, and he didn't do nothing wrong to me. He didn't put my life in danger. I asked him, is there any way possible I could ride in the car with him? Or he'd take me downtown. Just said no, because the other officer was arresting an officer. I had to ride with him, which is, I found that kind of weird because I'm threatened by this officer. So why should I have to ride with anybody that I'm threatened by? As I got in that car, there was a K-9 unit. He was pretty riled up. At that point, I'm calm. I'm in handcuffs behind my back. That dog is behind me, barking, growling, and, you know, I'm threatened now by the dog. I'm bothered because this dog is just back there routed up. The car is shaking because he's barking and stuff. They wouldn't let me go with no other officer. Before we pulled off, this officer stayed. Oh, well, let me get out and make sure these doors are closed for this dog don't get out. I remember him walking out, walked to the Waffle House employee, and the window was down. He asked them to write a statement, which that's the statement that had been released. Of course, it's going to look like they're in the right because they wrote their own statement. They're going to do everything to defend themselves. But these are people that was trying to throw things at me. These are people that was trying to threaten me, told me what they was going to do to me and stuff. And, you know, I look at it like I got arrested for disorderly conduct. Why are they not arrested for that? Why are they not having charge there for that? They was disordered, out of control at their workplace.
And they use homophobic slurs towards you?
All kinds of faggots, F-bombs, what they would do, how they was going to beat us and stuff. So, yes. As we got back in this police car, he did pretend to make sure the doors were closed or whatever. We got down the road. His driving was dangerous. I was certain by that also. Once again, I'm in the front seat in handcuffs, K9 in the back, and the gate that's divided us. Got down the road, passing the no passing on, excessive speed. Left the officer that was watching behind us, that was following us, going in the same direction as us, with nothing in the car, no K9. Why couldn't I be in that car with that officer? The dog got out, snapped at me at this side. At this time, I'm in fear of my life again, because this is a dog that's probably going to protect the officer and that's trying to protect the officer, but I'm no harm to him, in handcuffs, hands behind my back, locked up, and the dog got out and snapped at me.
So let me make sure I understand. There was a cage separating the front seat from the back seat where the dog was roaming free. And even though he alleged to have made sure it was secure, the gate then opens and the dog head comes in the front of the car trying to get at you.
Correct. After he had forcefully passed the car in the speed lane with excessive speed and left the officer, that's when that dog apparently popped out. And as we got down there to the magistrate's office, I asked the officer that was out there that followed us, and the other officer said he could put my hands in front because I was no threat, no harm to him. They handcuffed me in my front. I asked him, is it usual for a dog to get out of a cage? And he said, excuse me, what did he say? I said, is it unusual for a dog to open the cage itself? He said, no. He said, why would you ask that? I said, because the dog got out the cage while I was in the car.
So we want that surveillance video
well
from the police car as well, because that shows further the police brutality that was exhibited towards this young man who, when you watch this video, you all can judge for yourself, he doesn't seem to be a threat to this officer ever, but yet he is brutalized and excessive force is used against him. The other thing Attorney Rogers and I intend to do is to find out what is the policy of this police department, because everywhere I know you don't transport individual suspects in cars with police dogs or canines, especially if there were 5 other cars out there that could have safely transported him. Right. So Attorney Rogers and I plan on making sure we look under every stone to get to the truth. This is an investigation we're doing as to whether there's a pattern and practice of discrimination based on race and based on sexual orientation. As it relates to the police, Attorney Rogers, who has had several cases of civil rights against police departments, are going to really investigate this police department, this officer's history of excessive force with African Americans, as well as the policies, to see that these policies, if they were violated, were they violated intentionally? I submit to you from some of the treatments you see before he got in the police car suggests why they put him in the car with the police dog.
Also, I asked this officer why sitting in the car with that dog before they walked off and left me unattended. All the officers walked off and left me with that dog. It was still barking and growling. I asked him, is it because I was black? He just laughed and walked off, didn't say nothing else.
So you said after you had already been assaulted and they put you in the back of the car and just left you there with the dog?
The front seat.
Well, they left you in the car with the dog?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try to take some questions. Remember, we're probably not going to have Mr. Wall answer any questions because he is facing these criminal charges.
Yeah, just real quickly, it's my understanding that the CEO of Waffle House has reached out to Anthony. Alan, did you talk to him? What's the gist of that, and have we accepted an apology or what?
We're certainly dealing with that. Some overtures have been made, and I think we're definitely dealing with that. While Mr. Wall may be welcome to return, we will be dealing with them directly and try to resolve issues related to what happened that night. Obviously, they have interest with the problems that they have around the country and trying to put the best spin, if you will, but we'll deal with it legally.
And clearly, we're here in Cumberland County. This incident had nothing to do with Cumberland County. Mr. Wall lives here in Fayetteville. What's the plan to come to Duplin County or talk with folks? How soon will that happen?
Well, right now, as I said, we're investigating because we think this is a national issue. I mean, this is a national corporate issue that they have to address because we believe they have a policy and practice of discriminating against African Americans. You know, and now with this here, we want to find out if they have a problem discriminating against members of the LGBTQ community. And so it is very important that Mr. Wall matter isn't swept under the rug, and then we see an unknown Mr. Wall from the gay and lesbian community discriminated against next month. So we're trying to address all these problems from a national perspective, whether it's Shakisha Clemens in Alabama, whether it's the 4 young boys in Tulsa, Oklahoma, whether it's the young woman who was locked out of Waffle House in Alabama, whether it is Anthony Wall and his sisters and their friends being discriminated against. It is a national issue that we are attempting to address.
And Gilbert, there is a meeting scheduled this evening because of basically death threats. Mr. Wall may not be attending the meeting, but there will be representatives at the meeting.
Talk about the death threats. What's happening?
Well,
Who's getting it?
You know, when you work in the area of civil rights, these things become the norm. And I'm sure Ben can attest to that. But Mr. Wall has certainly had some messages that would suggest that there are those within that community that consider themselves, consider their purpose to quiet him, and they encourage him to not allow himself to be exposed, because he would be harmed if he was. So,
any other questions?
How does that make you feel that you have people defending that officer's action?
I feel bad because, you know, it's people that's younger than me that could have went through this situation, that could continue to go through this situation if officers like that is still out here.
Are you surprised that the mayor up there is supportive of his officer?
He's going to do that.
I'll say this, only since that issue has come up with some print journalists as well. I don't know the mayor. I understand his history may be working with law enforcement in some capacity. But when he says that this had nothing to do with racism, it's very difficult to accept that when these young people felt that's exactly what it had to deal with, number one. And number two, we haven't seen any video of young white people being assaulted and battered in Waffle House. Why is it only African Americans that's being assaulted and battered? You know, res locator is a thing they teach us in law school. The matter speaks for itself. Yeah. You know, and we cannot forget the fact that these police officers who are being called with the narrative or the version from the Waffle House employees, and the things that they are saying to have these police feel they have to handle the matter in these type of ways. Because think about it, the mass murderer who went into the Waffle House in Tennessee and killed 4 people, the police seem to have given him more respect and consideration than they gave Anthony Wall when they put his hand choking him. Shakisha Clemens, hands choking him. Well, we haven't seen any video from the young white mass murderer in Tennessee where they went and choked him. So you tell me if it's a problem with racism or not.
Watching the video, it seemed like he had you on the ground for a little while. Well, how long were you on the ground, and what was going through your mind at that point?
I was threatened, terrified the whole time on the ground. I don't know how long I was on there. I just know that his weight was on my body, and I do have pain up through my body.
Yeah, and Attorney Rogers, during his investigations, have been able to confirm that this was a rather large police officer.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's still on the job?
I'm sorry, yeah, he is still on the job, from all we know. And again, I'm appalled at the mayor that he would not have been at least professional enough to say we will wait until the investigation is completed. If the mayor has seen a video from the Waffle House or a video from the police cam that would support his position, I wish he would share it with us. He's only been a mayor for 6 months, and
Is he black?
he is African American. But again, we would appreciate that video, and we expect that we will get those videos.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we know about that officer? Does he have a history or a pattern? Have you been
Well,
able to
Attorney
tell?
Rogers and his office have already started filing requests for information and discovery about that officer in particular, as well as that police department.
Yeah, we've been told that, but we don't have any confirmed reports. That'll be a part of our investigation.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Again, thank you all. Thank the NAACP for coming out.